5 successive abbots at St Benedicts Abbey have been linked to cover up, rape, lies, allowing paedophilia to roam, or disrespecting sexual abuse victims. And there seems to be no sign of stoppage. In order of lineage, we have the first abbot, 1956, Rupert Hall, followed by Francis Rossitier, then Lawrence Soper, Martin Shipley, and today Dominic Taylor. Let's start with Abbot Hall. I'm going to talk to you about Abbot Hall, and I'm going to read you a little bit from this book written by Richard Scorer, who was a lawyer for iicsa, iicsa. Father Kevin Horsey joined the Ealing monastic community in 1942. In 1948, he seems to have sexually abused a boy in the local Ealing scout troop. By the mid-1960s, he was master of the middle school. He obviously got a promotion. A former pupil recalled being sexually abused in his first year of middle school by Father Kevin. Well, that's the initiation. This took place in the old gym during PT lessons. That's physical education, for those that don't know. Father Kevin organised team games, and the resting team sat on the edge of the stage alongside Father Kevin. Guess what Father Kevin's going to do to the resting side? He sat you on his lap, and within minutes, he would place his hand inside your PT shorts and fondle your genitals. This occurred frequently during PT lessons and to many boys. I did not know the significance of his actions at the time, but I have never forgotten them because the boy was young and prepubescent, obviously. I would say the main feeling have been of shame and anger. I never mentioned this to my family until 2010. Horsey died in 2006, thank God, without being prosecuted, but was named by the Daily Mail as a prolific abuser. Woo! Would never have thought that. His obituary was removed from the Old Priorians Association. Old Priorians are the people that used to go to St Benedicts. And a school building named after him was renamed, because that's what happens when you're a paedophile. You have school names named after you, especially when everyone knows what you're up to, especially at St Benedicts. It seems likely that in 1965, a boy's parents complained to the then abbot, Dom Rupert Hall, about a sexual assault on their son. Father Kevin was removed from the school to parish work, but the precise details have never been confirmed by the school. Now, you would have thought that the abbot took sexual abuse very seriously, him being a monk, monks following Jesus, and Jesus loving children. Not in that way, but a better way. But no, Father Horsey, knowingly to the abbot, was allowed to carry on with scout camps. And we all know what happens at scout camps, don't we? With priests that are sexual abusers. And if you don't, just join the dots together. As we can see, St Benedict's has had a rather good history of covering up and obfuscating evidence. In 1965, the abbot knew about Hall's dirty tricks. I'd like to read a little bit by two victims. The first one, John Burke, who was there in 1949 to 56. He said, in about 1968, one of my many cousins there later told me that Horsey had been moved from the school to parish work for an alleged sexual abuse. I then referred to a second victim. I was sexually abused in my first year of middle school by Father Kevin. This took place in the old gym during the PT lessons, which is obviously the a victim that I've just read to you. Rupert Hall has just allowed a paedophile, he knowingly knows he's a paedophile, to go and work with young boys. Now, you might think that's not normal, but at St Benedicts Abbey, that's very normal. Even better, Chris Clue, who was one of St Benedict's senior school headmasters, said the whole school and community are deeply saddened at the deaths of Father Bernard and Father Kevin, both of whom were wonderful supporters of the school. Yes, but we're supporting the school in different ways. One was supporting the reputation and another was supporting a little boy's penis in his hand. They died in 2006 and Kevin Horsey has never been brought to justice as a result. Going on to the second abbot, we have Abbot Rossiter, who was there from 1967 to 1991. I believe he's still alive. In 1984, now convicted paedophile John Maestri, who was a teacher, not a monk, at St Benedicts School, when one of the parents complained to the abbot, Maestri was moved on from the school to another school to freely abuse boys at the other school. The reason was given for Maestri's departure was on health grounds. It would have been highly likely he was given a reference. In other words, the abbot, that would be Abbot Rossiter, and the school gave a reference to a known paedophile to teach at another school so he could go on and carry on abusing children elsewhere. Because obviously nobody likes the shit on their own doorstep. In spite of the fact there seems to be quite a lot of shit on St Benedict's doorstep. Now, it was against the law in those days to make an arrangement like this and not report the circumstances of the departure to the teacher misconduct section of the Department of Education. So the abbot now has broken the law. The abbot never asked any other parents if their children or the boys at the school if they had been sexually assaulted, and why would he? He doesn't want to know, and cared nothing for other children at other schools Maestri was sent on to teach at. Maestri was later convicted of multiple cases of sexual assault. Now, when Rossiter was no longer the abbot, he remained as a trustee of St Benedict's and the school until 2011. Now, in 2011, by that time, David Pearce had already been sent to prison, and they were looking for Soper, who was going to get 19 years in prison for 19 counts of rape and buggery. One victim reported that his mother went to complain about a sexual abuse case, and Rossiter paid the mother to keep quiet and sign a contract to cover it all up. That boy's life was destroyed. It is said Rossiter knew about David Pearce's sexual abuse, and under Rossiter, the abbey filled up with paedophiles. I wonder if there's a link. Now we get to the infamous Lawrence Soper, paedophile rapist extraordinaire. He was the abbot from 1991 to 2000. He was the headmaster of St Benedict's, and he ruled with an iron fist, sometimes probably even fisting the children as they went through the school. And at his time there, he raped and tortured many boys. He was put into prison in 2019 for 19 counts of sexual abuse against 19 boys. And that is not all the boys. You could probably triple that figure quite easily. Sentencing, Judge Anthony Bates said Soper's conduct was the most appalling breach of trust, and he had subverted the rules of the St Benedict order and teachings of the Catholic Church. It seems sometimes that he was carrying out the exact teachings of the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church seemed not to be stopping sexual abuse. And some popes have even said sexually abusing boys is like rubbing your wet hands on a wall. Believe it or not. Soper was attacked while on remand at Wormwood Scrubs, the court was told. He is now being held in segregation for his own protection. Or when he dies, the prison's not going to be there to protect him, is it, from Jesus? Because Jesus is going to come down with his big angry Thor fist and hit him into hell. When Soper was abbot, he suddenly just resigned, and nobody's ever been able to find out exactly why. But what we do know is that he was whisked off to the Vatican very quickly after that. And it's said that because of the amount of complaints against him, it was thought that if they got him out of the country, those complaints would calm down a little bit. In his newfound home in the Vatican, or somewhere near the Vatican in Rome, he started drinking and he started behaving quite unmonk-like, which is quite strange, because for monks to complain about a monk not behaving monk-like, bit weird. And the monks were complaining about his drinking, yet the monks at St Benedict's never complained about him sexually abusing kids or the others. So it's quite, how monks work is quite strange. There are some good monks out there that do come forward, but they don't come forward enough, and they don't come forward quickly. The nuncio, you need to know what a nuncio is. The nuncio is the Pope's diplomat, and obviously diplomats represent the president, so they represent the Pope. The nuncio during the iicsa investigation was Edward Adams, and Edward Adams was representing Pope Francis. And Pope Francis had a lot of words to say about sexual abuse and how he hates it so much, which is very strange because the nuncio then used his diplomatic privileges under the authority of Pope Francis to refuse to give evidence to iicsa, and anyone else that didn't have those diplomatic privileges would have spent some time in prison. So I find it very difficult to understand how someone so high up, an American, Edward Adams, used his diplomatic privileges to cover up and hide the reasons why Soper was sent to Rome and what they knew about his sexual abuse activity. Adams then subsequently resigned a little bit after, a bit like Shipley and a bit like Soper. So what they do is they get into trouble and then they take a bullet for the family and they resign. And then everyone forgets and everything goes back to normal. Normal for them seems to be sexually abusing more children. Lawrence Soper also persuaded some of the parents not to go to the police. One father at St Benedicts punched Pierce in the face for sexually abusing one or more of his boys. And it was agreed between Soper and the parents that they would keep it in-house. Shame on that father, because that man, Pierce, went on to abuse more people and that could have been stopped. And as a parent, you don't have the right to keep it in-house with the Catholic Church. You have to go to the police to protect other children. Disturbingly, however, these cases were never brought to the attention of other parents, and Pierce was allowed to remain in the abbey under a restrictive covenant, an order made by the abbot supposedly limiting his contact with minors, or rather, as the abbot Dom Shipley put it, who's the next abbot after this, protecting him from unfounded allegations. This covenant was broken. Pierce daily went to the school because Pierce became bursar, and he daily went to the refectory and he came into contact with the junior school and upper school. So that was never put in place. Lawrence Soper was abbot from 1991 to 2000, and Shipley from 2000 to 2019, where he too resigned in the middle of the iicsa when it became apparent he had quite literally made a fool out of himself. Shipley is accused by some people of covering up paedophilia, allowing it to happen, and surprisingly, he claims he had no knowledge of what was going on, when everyone else in the monastery, staff and students and school all did. In spite of the fact he would have access to documents from the police and had been in the monastery and Pierce was arrested and then released, also being headmaster of the junior school after police, where there would have been documents of allegations against Pierce. His excuses don't really mount up to any truth, and it's difficult to understand why he would say something like that, unless of course he's taking a bullet for his brothers. When victim RHA6 went to go and visit Shipley was quite nonchalant and wasn't really interested in the conversation. This happened in 2003 when he was complaining about being sexually abused by Pierce. Now Shipley, for the first time here, admitted to knowing rumours about David Pierce, the ex-headmaster of St Benedicts, that he was actually abusing children, which is contrary to what he said under oath in the iicsa, and that is extremely dishonest, if not a lie. When Pierce lost the 2006 civil court case, he had to pay the victim £43,000. Now, the civil court case win should be enough to sort of say that David Pierce is guilty. A civil court case doesn't have the same probability as a criminal court case. Now, Shipley also knew that Pierce had been punched in the face by a parent, and he was punched in the face by a parent because the parent accused him of sexually abusing one or more of his children. A covenant was made between Pierce and the abbot then, which was Lawrence Soper. And that was that he wasn't allowed to go and see children or be near them. That covenant was broken every single day because Pierce went to the refectory as the bursar and he met and introduced himself to junior school boys. Now, when that allegation happened and a parent punched Pierce in the face, Shipley said that it was an unfounded allegation. School parents normally don't go and punch headmasters in the face for no reason. It's not normally done. in middle-class white elite Catholic schools. Shipley, instead of castigating Pierce or worrying about his loss in the 2006 court case that he might have actually done it because the judge said that the victim, RHA6, had the ring of truth about him, Shipley then gave him a promotion, if you like. He made him novice master. Now, novice master is when you are in charge of the new people coming in to the church and you are responsible for their health and you're in a position where you can go and recruit paedophiles. It has been said by some people that the monks wanted Shipley as the abbot because he was weak and they could manipulate him. However, weak in the sense he didn't believe what they were doing were true, or he knew what they were doing but didn't do anything. One of the monks there, Dom Nunn, was approached by a member of staff about allegations against Pierce abusing boys. He went to Abbot Martin to explain. Abbot Martin said, "What am I supposed to do? He's my friend." Dude, if your friend is raping kids, he's not your friend unless you want friends that are paedophiles. And what type of person wants friends that are paedophiles? Other paedophiles. Give me another excuse. So the thing I don't understand is Jesus, he didn't like paedophiles either. In fact, he incited people to kill paedophiles. And I'll read you a bit from Matthew. Matthew's one of the Gospels. It would be better for him, i.e. paedophile, to have a heavy millstone hung around his neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. Even Jesus hated paedophiles. He hated them more than criminals. Criminals hate paedophiles in prison. In prison, they've got to segregate paedophiles because prisoners see paedophilia as the worst form of crime, even though they're criminals. In the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, iicsa, it became apparent Shipley had made huge failures, and before the end of the hearing, he had to resign. RHA6 claims Shipley did not tell the truth in the hearing. When Shipley resigned, perhaps the two largest failings were, and I quote Jonathan West here, his admission that he had failed to pass to the police in 2001 a serious allegation about his predecessor, Abbot Lawrence Soper, and that the Abbey lawyers had in effect threatened another complainant against Soper into silence in 2004. In 2020, the Abbey lawyers also refused to hand over legal documents to RHA6 when he asked for an SAR. The SAR that he received was incomplete, and that is under Dominic Taylor. Now we go on to the last of the 5 great abbots that have all covered up, raped or done something bad to do with sexual abuse in children. Dominic Taylor is the last, 2019 until present. How long is he going to stay in the abbey? Bets are on. Anyway, in his opening statement, he said he apologises for the wrongs of past members of the community. Now, Shipley is not a past member of the community. Shipley is still in the church. Shipley is the one that allowed threats to go to one of the victims and also didn't pass on dossiers. He should be lastised or he should be convicted. But he's still in the monastery and he's still saying masses. And the people are still flocking there to go and listen to him. The great Abbot Dominic Taylor goes on to say, "The children affected are in our daily prayers, and we recognise the shame brought upon us. We also accept this." Well, according to Jonathan West, prayers are all very well, but has it really not occurred to the community that some rather more active response could conceivably have been considered? In fact, Dominic Taylor seems to be in prayer so much, he refuses to respond to victims of sexual abuse. Dominic Taylor tries to minimise the paedophile crisis. He says St Benedicts School is now an entirely separate institution and the monastic community exercises no control in either the governance or management of the school. Well, according to Jonathan West, accounts lodged with the Charity Commission lists the governors of the school, among whom are Ambrose McCambridge, Martin Shipley and Dominic Taylor. The monks do not form a majority on the board of governors, but this is still hardly a situation where the abbot can justify claims that the monastic community exercises no control over the governance of the school. Another little white lie, because obviously monks don't do black lies. Dominic Taylor goes on to say, "We recognise that these events have had appalling consequences on the victims, and we have used our very best endeavours to ensure that this can never be repeated. But he's also, at the same time as ignoring the sexual abuse victims, paying David Pearce, the one who raped children and was in prison for 8 years, money for his rent. In fact, David Pearce is receiving more money than the compensation that the victims got. And on top of that, the victim has asked Dominic Taylor to return his school fees. I mean, if you pay someone to teach you and to give you the best leg up in life, and in return they sexually abuse you and destroy your life, I would have thought you would have got your school fees back for that. But not in Dominic Taylor's mind, because that money is his money, and he doesn't wish to part with it. He really enjoys keeping sexual abuse money and psychologically abusing those children, or adults now, who are still getting flashbacks. Parents still send their children to St Benedicts, and doing so they solidify St Benedicts and the Abbey and the reputation. Parents are not doing a very good job by sending their children there. Parents need to know what's going on, and they need to know that the school is torturing old former pupils, and they're just not helping them at all. It's a whitewash what they're saying. They're just trying to cover up and make something bad look good, when in fact the bad's going on, and your school fees are helping to propagate that. The new Abbot President is Abbot Christopher Jamison. Abbot Christopher Jamison went to all the iicsa meetings. He's also clever and competent person. He went to Oxford, and he also went to school at Downside. However, he does have his allegiance to the Catholic Church, his brothers, and the English Benedictine community. So I've got a message for the Abbot President. Today, you're judged by your mates. But tomorrow, you're judged by consciousness, or God in your case. I'm asking you, Abbot President, not to listen to God's words. I'm asking you, Abbot President, to understand the true nature of God's words first. Because all the other monks think that they've acted in the name of God, but they're not going to heaven. They're going to hell. The same hell where that 16-year-old boy went when he shot himself in the head with an air rifle, and it took him 13 months to die. The same boy that came out of one of those monks' offices, having been castigated with his pants down and having soiled himself. To save the ECB, you need to make very hard decisions. People might not like you for it. That shouldn't worry you. But God will like you. And those decisions should be based on one concept: honesty and truth. Tell the public about the cover-ups and clean the church up. People will respect you for that in the long term. People are now starting to see priests more like perverts. And that's not something that will happen. It's something that already has happened.